and welcome to the Anything But Bland podcast. I'm Ashley Postaway, and I have my co-host Kailey here with me today.
Hi, guys.
And today we have an F-word episode for you guys. So I know it's been a little bit. I'm sorry to disappoint you. We don't have Danny on here today, but I promise she'll be back. But yes, so today we're going to have a fraud episode, aka an F-word episode, and Kailey's going to tell us about that. So bear with us. I know you all can learn something, whether you're a big business, a small business, a one-man shop, even just somebody that works in a business, so you can help spot some certain things. So
absolutely,
I'll let Kailey take it away with that, and we'll just get started with that.
Let's do it, because this is kind of a longer story, and it's an interesting perspective. So I'm excited to share it with everyone. We've talked before about how, you really can't trust you
can't trust anyone.
No, you can't trust anyone.
Just be aware.
And certainly not implicitly. And it's hard, especially when, people hold themselves out as someone that you should trust. That makes it harder too. So, anywho, the story that we're going to talk about today takes us to the beautiful shores of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Have you been there?
I was going to say, I've never been there. Have you?
No, I haven't.
I've seen some shows there, and it's very beautiful.
It seems very beautiful. Certainly not the setting for some mean fraud, but it can happen anywhere. And so in Cape Cod, just a seemingly normal woman was able to create a really complex web of deceit and obviously change the lives forever of her victims. And the perpetrator in today's story's name is Jessica Greenan. And she is a former bookkeeper.
Okay.
And she, just like anyone, nice, normal person. I saw some photos of her online, and she didn't have a big "I'm a fraudster" tattoo on her
no
face.
Glasses on, black glasses.
Yeah. Nice, unassuming, normal-looking person. And so we don't have much about Jessica. We'll talk about the size for fraud kind of towards the end here. It wasn't one of the biggest in the United States or anything like that, so it really hasn't been covered in depth, so we don't have a lot of information on Jessica's background or anything like that. So our story actually starts in October of 2014, where Jessica is a bookkeeper for a company called Bottom Line Bookkeeping.
Okay.
So she actually works for a bookkeeping company. And I think that's an interesting component that we haven't talked about in any of our other F-word series, is oftentimes it's an internal employee that's perpetrating the fraud. This is from a bookkeeping company that was hired by a company. So she's
bookkeeping for a different... her client is a different business.
Exactly. Okay. Yep, exactly. So she may work for multiple different businesses through the bookkeeping firm that she is hired by, which was called Bottom Line Bookkeeping. Does not appear that Bottom Line Bookkeeping is still in business, and that will make sense as we continue down this story. So in October, Jessica is assigned to work on the bookkeeping for a company called Powderhorn Outfitters, which is a company that is still in existence today. And it's a company that harvests trophy Western big game for people that go on hunts.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm describing?
Well, I'm thinking more like horses and stuff. Like, what kind of hunts are we talking?
We are talking about trophy elk.
Oh, okay, I'm following. So, hunting like big game.
Yes, I think when you go to Shields and you see the big ram up on top of the mountain, this type of company could have been the one to create that. So, anywho, that is who Jessica is going to be assisting with their bookkeeping. And almost immediately upon starting on their bookkeeping, she started being able to exploit her position and begin funneling funds to her own pockets. And what she did...
Right away?
Yes, right away. Because the thing is, and that's where it's hard, and that's where, we'll kind of go through some lessons learned at the end, but when there's a bookkeeping transition that takes place, and I can speak to this just from how it even works at Bland as well, a lot of the different systems are all integrated, and so you have, you're maybe setting them up on QuickBooks, and then you're also integrating it with their bank account. And
you have
so
all this information.
You're getting access right away to all the critical
I have a red flag right away. You say like right away she started doing this fraud or starting it like maybe this isn't her first time and this is the first time.
Well,
okay,
interesting you say that. Interesting you say that. So she gets in there. She starts finding little ways to take money. And what she did was, and we've heard this before, is she created fictitious vendors, fake invoices, and was able to take the company money and pay these vendors, pay these invoices. It ended up, after all was said and done, that she was able to do this 536 times over the course of 4 years.
Okay.
Yes. And so she, over those 4 years, through the fake invoices and fake vendors, was really just paying her credit card. And, you know, they didn't have any information, and I tried to read as many articles as were available about this, about what her motives may have been, but I suspect it was just living beyond her means and wanting a better, wanting to buy more than her normal salary at the bookkeeping company would allow for. So really all this money was ultimately going to pay these credit card bills. And so then what she would do to cover her tracks, because like you said, I mean, this started right away and it went on for 4 years. And how did no one catch this? What she would do is then once the bank statements would come in the mail, she would edit those documents so that it looked like, the payments that she had made to her credit card and to these fake vendors were actually legitimate expenses. And this,
but time out, were these other companies getting paid on also? We don't know.
Her other companies,
so she's paying herself, but then she's editing these invoices when they come in to look like she's paying someone else.
Oh, right. No, so she's paying the normal bills too. It didn't sound like there were other vendors going unpaid or anything like that. She was kind of acting like, oh, the utilities required a second payment this month, so here's two to the utility company. Something like that. And so that went on, like I said, for 4 years. And Powderhorn, the name of the company, only became aware of the fraud, actually, when they were approached by federal authorities who had been investigating her.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep. So that happened in April of 2018, and the federal authorities were on to Jessica. There's not a ton of information about if and when she was arrested right then, you know, in April of 2018, but she did eventually get indicted on the fraud for Powderhorn. And a little kind of funny note about that, something that was in the article, and again, I'll kind of save the dollar amounts towards the end, but one thing, when she was caught on by the federal authorities and where they may have been able to start to learn of something going on was through tax returns. And so she, of course not, what fraudsters reporting all their, you know, income from fraud on their tax returns. You know, I don't think criminals want to pay taxes.
No, probably not.
On normal money, let alone.
She's the one working with the tax accountants, giving them all the stuff because she's the bookkeeper.
Exactly, exactly. So it ends up like that she also had, which I think is just kind of funny, $325,000 of unpaid federal taxes that would have been, you know, needed to be paid on the money that she stole. So they're, you know, once they've identified someone, they're just going to go full throttle. Yes. And what can we add on to your list of charges here? So anyway, so she gets caught up by the federal authorities here, and there is an indictment, and she's awaiting trial, waiting, you know, her fate, I suppose. She wasn't guilty, presumed innocent, right, until she is tried. So in the meantime, she was able to be out on her own recognizance. And
so she was fired from Bottom.
Yes, fired from Bottom Line and kind of dealing with the fallout of all of this, but able to be at home. And so wouldn't you know it, back to your earlier comment, she then was able to get a job somewhere else while she was out. And they clearly didn't run a background check, or I don't know, maybe because she hadn't been found guilty, maybe nothing would have.
Maybe she's very personable and you would never think this.
Right. I mean, who knows? And that just goes back to our earlier conversation, whether there was diligence done or not. One way or another, she ended up being a bookkeeper.
Oh my gosh.
For a construction company.
Oh,
yes.
Big money, probably.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, I'm sure, out in Cape Cod when you see the very nice houses that are out there. And so, unfortunately, listeners, yes, she did it again.
Oh, man.
I know. And she...
Gosh, why would you do it again if the federal government, whoever the agent, whatever, already told you, like, you're in trouble and you're waiting to go stand trial or whatever. Do it again?
Yes.
Like,
you're clearly
maybe
under
the first time
scrutiny.
you could get, like, a slap on the hand. Maybe not. But now if she gets caught again.
It's crazy. I know. And that's why I am curious. Like, there's a story out there that someone needs to, like, interview Jessica and find out exactly why she did this. Because there really are not that many articles. I was, like, scouring the internet, and I used up...
Google.
Yeah, some newspapers or websites will only let you read, like, 1 or 2 articles, and then you have to, like, pay for the subscription.
Yes.
I was like, I don't need a subscription to the Cape Cod Register,
Not for this month.
Yeah. So we'll just go with whatever's publicly available.
Yes.
But, yeah, there just was not a lot. So I would be curious to know, like, it was obviously some sort of strong enough motive that she felt like,
I know. I want to know why she did it. Like, did she have a sick parent? Does she have children? Like, does she want to go on these vacations? Like the horse one? Is she...
Exactly. Yeah. What is she trying to fund here with this money? And so she does. In August of 2018, she starts working for Roger Constructions on Cape Cod as their bookkeeper. And to no one's surprise, except maybe Roger Construction, she immediately begins stealing money again. And she used the exact same tactics that she had used at Powderhorn. So
she could have got more clever at least.
I know. Yeah. Nope. Just back to her roots, I suppose. And so Roger Construction, they pick up on it pretty shortly after it starts, although she still was able to take quite a bit of money from them, even in the short amount of time that she was there. It sounds like Roger Construction was able to identify her fraud through some of their own internal audit and review of her transactions. And so thankfully, yes,
it did. Clap for them for doing internal stuff like that.
Truly, yeah, truly. And so after it was discovered what she did at Roger, she was also turned over to the authorities for that one. And so then now there was actually 2 different indictments going on, the one for Powderhorn and the one for Rogers Construction. And so ultimately, with those 2 indictments looming over her, she did end up pleading guilty to the charges and not having to go through a full-blown trial. And that's probably why we don't have a lot of information, too. You know, maybe that would have been the opportunity for a defense attorney to say, this is why she did it, or, I don't know. So anyway, she pled guilty. And in 2021, she was sentenced by...
Oh, my gosh, this happened in 18?
Yeah.
And she didn't get sentenced till 20... That life would stink in between.
Oh, yes, I'm sure. And I don't know. I'll tell you the sentence, and you can tell me if you think it's too harsh, too little. I suppose I'll tell you the sentence, but then let me also tell you the amounts, and then you can weigh in.
Okay.
So she was sentenced to 70 months in prison and 5 years of supervised release after that. Then she also has to pay restitution, and so then this will give you the idea of the amounts that she took. So she's got to pay $1.5 million to the fraud victim. So that's both companies. So
1.5 each or altogether?
Altogether. Okay. So she ended up taking about 1.1 from Powderhorn and about $400K from the construction company. Okay. So 1.5 to the victims. She owes our friends at the IRS $412,000. And then she had 2 vehicles that had to be turned over. And so who knows if she'll ever actually be able to pay any of that back.
Yes.
So what do you think? So a little more than 5 years in prison.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of time in prison. Personally, like I feel like, yes, she should pay all the money back. But other fraud cases we've listened to, I don't feel like they've gotten many years for doing that.
Right.
So to get 5 years or a little over 5 years, I think it's a little harsh, but maybe they were mad because she did it once, got caught, and then did it again. Like, you didn't learn your lesson, so
I think you're exactly right. Repeat offender. Yeah.
And, like, she didn't learn anything from the first time. Like, she was just waiting for trial or whatever and just did it again. So what's to say, like, oh, you get 11 months in prison, you have to pay all this money, and she gets out and she's like, well, that was easy. Let's do it again. I can spend another year. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I think you're exactly right. I think they had to be as harsh on her as they could so that she would hopefully
learn her lesson.
Yeah.
Because she didn't, obviously, the first time.
Right.
She's kind of, that stinks.
Yeah. And so that's really kind of the conclusion of the story. It's just crazy. When I was reading and researching and obviously being an accountant myself, I was a little more appalled at this one, I think, than I've been at others, because a lot of our clients, when they come on as a bookkeeping client, like, they are so relieved that they're not doing it themselves, or that they can find someone reputable that's going to do a good job, and that they're going to have accurate information to look at each month to make important decisions about their business. And so then to hear that it was a bookkeeper from a bookkeeping company,
right. It hurts a little bit.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And so I think there's just a couple lessons to share with the listeners here, because if I put myself in their shoes, I think, hey, it's handled. I have
the business owners.
XYZ book company.
This is what you excel in. You have all the reins. Like, you do it. I trust you. Like,
exactly. And just the empathy factor of, they probably thought, back to some of the other stories we've covered, like, oh, I can't pay my employees these wages this month, or I can't do this or that because we're short on cash and I don't know why, and all those things. And so I think,
and you could say you'd like them to do dual control, but if you're a company using a bookkeeping company, you'd think all that dual stuff is going on in the background, and that you wouldn't even have to worry about it. So as a business owner, I don't even know how you would go about into a bookkeeping company saying, hey, I've heard about these cases. Like, what can you do to ensure me that things are being handled or double checked?
Right. So that's a great question. And I think part of the answer is, as much as you can, you still need to have some oversight as the business owner, and keep an eye out for red flags. I think that's one thing that,
just have your hand in a little bit so you know, like, where your financials are.
Exactly. So back to the example I gave in the story, where if on the bank statement she's coding her fraudulent transactions as utilities or whatever other vendor they're using, and now all of a sudden the expenses to the utility company or the expenses to this supplier have doubled or are 20% higher, or maybe it's just a small increase across the board. Maybe there's probably a lot of different ways to go about it, but
it's easy for us to say that now, but this is why we're doing this, like, to tell you guys, these are things you can look for. And even if it was your own personal bank statement and you saw a double charge for a utility company, I'm thinking, hang on a second, did they pull that on accident? I'm going to call a utility company and, like, double check that.
Exactly. That's exactly it. I think it's asking the question and figuring out, am I satisfied with that answer, or does that answer not make sense? And not being afraid to keep asking the questions. I think a lot of people are just nice in life, and maybe they're like, I don't want to pester the bookkeeper. She answered this. All right, that's fine. I won't say anything.
But maybe putting that little pressure on will actually take some pressure on the bookkeeper, and they'll be like, oh no, they're catching on. I need to wait 6 months. Or, oh no, they're catching on. I need to stop before I get caught. It's too far.
Yeah. I mean, this is oftentimes these business owners' livelihood. Like, it's great to see that these companies are still in business, but we've covered other stories before where the businesses couldn't recover from the fraud. And so I think that would be one important takeaway, is to still have some level of oversight, to still have some level of understanding, and to not be afraid to ask questions, and to not be afraid to bring in another expert, or if you're starting to question but not sure how to figure it out yourself, that's another thing that we've covered in prior episodes. And I can think of an example here. There are certified fraud examiners, or even just another bookkeeper to look at some of this past history over the last couple months and see if it makes sense. I would say another important item would be, it truly does sound like she had kind of exclusive rights to get in there. There wasn't review happening at the bookkeeping company, and it doesn't sound like the company was really reviewing either. Making sure that you still have some level of access to get into the QuickBooks file, to get into the Peachtree file. Don't let your hands be tied because you can't see anything. There's certain reasons we have internal controls, like we don't want anybody to get in there and just be able to start posting journal entries and do whatever we want. But there's read-only access and other ways to go about still being able to view and have access to your information. And I think that's really important too. That's has been some of the causation of prior stories and might have happened here too, of how it goes on for so long because they're not able to get into the system and see utilities expense doubled month over month or something like that.
One last thing to add to that is if you are working with that, what was her name? Was that Lisa? What's her name?
Jessica.
Jessica. If you're working with Jessica and you have some sort of gut feeling because you want to be a part of it and you don't want her involved or hurt her feelings, I mean, you can always call those companies and be like, hey, let's have a meeting with their manager or whoever it is, because I'm sure they would be happy to, disclude her and just have a meeting with you just to verify everything because that has another person looking over your stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And actually, I did not include it in the script, but Powderhorn did end up suing the bookkeeping company as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think they may have reached a settlement. I don't know for sure. But I do know the owner of the bookkeeping company tried to distance herself and said, that was our employee acting on her own, of her own free will. But you were the business owner, and this happened on your watch, and you didn't have a level of review for what Jessica was doing. And
I bet they do now.
Oh yeah, well, she probably had to start over with a new name. I think Bottom Line
that was the bottom for them.
Yes.
They hit rock bottom. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kailey.
Yes.
We love F-word episodes on us. We hope you all do too. So is there anything else you want to add to the story? Or I think we've kind of gone over some tips and tricks to make sure that this doesn't happen to any sort of sized company or entrepreneur or anybody looking to get into business. You kind of have some, tips here to go off of. And
exactly.
If you ever have any questions about those, client or not client, reach out to us because we'd love to talk to you about it and see how we can help or what we can do to help you. So my contact information is always in the bottom, so go ahead and, reach out.
Yes, and we will include some links in the show notes to the sources that we used in today's episode.
All right. Well, one more last thing. Do you have any big plans this weekend? It's been really hot. As you can tell, we're in tank tops and not sweaters. When we start, we're always in sweaters, but...
Yeah, it's both my daughter's birthday coming up in the next 3 days.
Okay.
So
big parties, plans. Do they share a party or do separate parties?
We share a party.
Okay.
Yes. So that's fine for now.
I was gonna say,
maybe when they get older, they'll want their own thing. But for their mom, it's a lot easier to just do one.
I'm sure it's kind of easier these days than it will be when they get older. Maybe it gets easier when they get older. I don't know. I think it's more pressure on us when the younger they are.
100%. Yeah. 100%. What about you?
Plans this weekend? No, I think we're just going swimming. We're going to go to the pool a couple times.
Nice. Cool down a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to put a TV up on our patio outside.
Oh, fun.
So my dad has to come over and do that. But
that's a great
house
vibe.
Stuff.
Yeah, it's good to have those weekends.
It's been so busy lately, and then we have the holidays coming up. So
I hear ya.
Just kind of taking a relaxing weekend it sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, everyone. Well, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We always love rate and reviews on our podcast. You can find us at blandcpa.com or on Instagram at Bland Accounting. And reach out. We do give out some swag if you do leave some comments in our podcast ratings. So do reach out and do that. And as for that, everyone, please be informed,
be inspired,
and be awesome. Bye.
A Hurrdat Media Production.